Hi there. In today's video, we're going to be answering the question, where does self-doubt come from? It's really going to be about an experience I had with a therapist that I see. So I guess where does my self-doubt come from? And you know, I have a pretty, quite a relationship with self-doubt. It's just something that sort of comes up in me a lot, this sort of amorphous feeling that sort of like gets in my way. And over time, I've sort of identified it as just self-doubt, the feeling, the sensation of it in my body. And during a session I had with my therapist, I sort of discovered the root of it. And as they say, it's not what you think. It matters because there's a lot of dark stuff that we have pushed away in us, and all of that dark stuff has a gift. When we can meet it with enough awareness and process it through the lens of our heart, there are gifts to all of those parts. You know, those parts aren't something to get rid of. Often people would want to clear them or get rid of them, but they are parts of us that deserve love, and they actually contain the wisdom and the gifts that we need to move to the next stage of our evolution. But before we get there, I'm Dr. J from the BioSoul Integration Center in Louisville, Colorado, and I help people embody their soul's gifts and their soul's essence. If you see this video on YouTube, please like it, please share it, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's very helpful. And do the social thing wherever you might run into this video. You might run into it on one of the other social media platforms. I've written a book called If It Didn't Hurt, How to Resolve Your Pain and Discover Your Life Purpose. It's kind of the ultimate guide to embodying these shadow parts of us. And you can get a free copy of that right now. Anyway, go to my website at biosoulintegration.com and you can get a free copy of If It Didn't Hurt, How to Resolve Your Pain and Discover Your Life Purpose. You might also run into this on audio, in an audio podcast form. This gets syndicated into an audio podcast, and you can listen to it wherever you listen to the BioSoul Integration podcast, wherever you listen to your audio podcasts. Okay, so let's get into it here. Again, it's kind of happened, an experience from during a therapy session that I had with a therapist that I see. No, I guess I won't mention her name right now. But her sessions are kind of similar to the work that I do with people. And you'll see in this, as I sort of unfold this session and what happened, you'll kind of see how it's very parts work related, and the different parts, when one part sort of comes up, it sort of illuminates its counterpart and the other part that might be in opposition to it. So you'll kind of see that and how I dealt with that, how I navigated that through this session. But it started with, I was feeling really inspired about a project that I still kind of am working on, which is kind of to gather together a network of healers in the area, do videos with them. And by the way, if you see this and you're interested in such a project, I want to do interviews with all of the healers in the area, just as a way to help them spread their work to the masses. But anyway, I was sort of inspired about that project, and I had this sort of feeling, just like really, you know, it's like this feeling of just life force energy moving through my body, and it's like resources had been freed up. I was inspired, and consequently there was a strong sort of, my notes kind of fell down here. Let me put those up there again. There was a strong feeling of life force energy moving through my body. I was inspired. And so that's kind of how I started with her, mentioning this sort of feeling of life, flow of life moving through me. But as I checked in with that flow of life in my body, it immediately sort of illuminated another part, which was a part of me that was a little bit afraid, a part of me that wanted to control, a part of me that wanted to know what the future might bring. It wanted to have certainty about what's ahead. You know, it was nervous about, there was a nervous part there. And what was happening with that part was that it wanted to control in some level. It wanted to know, it wanted to have some certainty about the future. Sort of like good luck, right? And yet, that's obviously, that's a common thing that lots of people experience, lots of humans experience, which I guess kind of doesn't make sense. We can't know what the future brings. A big part of, awakening that I'm always talking about, a big part of having a, sort of co-creative experience with life has a lot to do with the unknown. And I've talked in other videos about this sort of gripping that happens, a fundamental sort of gripping that happens in the life force energy in our bodies and being when we come into this world, when we're in the womb and our nervous system is feeling into the people around us and gathering information about how to do this human thing. We grip on the life force and we feel how they are bracing against life. And we assume that that's how it's done, and so we do that too. And a lot of that has to do with a relationship with uncertainty, like bracing, trying to control situations in our lives so that we don't have to feel uncertainty. Anyway, that's kind of a bit of a digression there. But I was coming into contact with this flow of life, and it was illuminating parts of me that maybe were not so ready to go along with that flow, and they wanted to know what the future might bring. They wanted to have some control over what was to come. And so I sort of felt those parts. I could sort of feel this flow of life force energy moving through me, and then consequently illuminated these other parts that kind of like weren't in the flow in my body. And fear. And so I connected with that in my body. Where is that exactly? What are the boundaries like? Does it have shape or volume? I think in this case, generally, often when I feel fear, it's in the belly. And I saw, and often I see sort of, different people are kind of geared differently. I tend to sort of see things. I tend to be visual, and I see things in my mind's eye often related. It's like my subconscious or whatever you want to call it is sort of giving me visual versions of these impressions that I'm getting when I'm feeling into something in my body. So I was feeling it in my body and feeling that, but also sort of had a picture of something in my head, which was this sort of like container, this fear, this control piece was sort of like a container. And it was sort of like I didn't want to move because I was afraid of rattling what was inside of it. There was a part of me, sort of a tender, innocent part of me inside this container, and I didn't want to rattle the container because I didn't want to rattle this tender part of me. And then the container started to change. It kind of turned into a cage. It had sort of like its solid walls started to dissolve, and it started to turn into sort of like a cage where I had partial access to this really tender, sweet, innocent part of me that was inside of there. It still was contained, still confined by this control, but it's like this part of me that was this cage around this tender part of me, this control piece, started to give me access. It still was a cage, it still was there, confining this tender, sensitive part of me, but I had access through the holes of the cage, right? And then I could feel the fear. I could feel that part that was in there, this tender, innocent part that was in there, and I felt fear. I had this embodied, probably, I would say, an experience unlike I've ever had of fear. It was this really exquisite relationship with fear. And I could feel the fear in my body, sort of green, sort of like electric, sort of caustic, electric, like an electric wire, or like it reminds me of what happens if you you have an exposed nerve in your teeth or something. It was kind of has that feeling, but sort of in other parts of my body, in my belly, in other parts of my body. And I was feeling this, but there was this distinct sense of it not being a problem. And that kind of sequenced itself through, and then this gratitude arose. And I was feeling the gratitude, and as often happens, like I said, in this process that you'll, sort of theme that keeps coming up is when I feel something, it often, when I have a more direct, more complete experience of something, like when I had the more complete experience of the flow of the inspiration in the beginning here, I noticed, what kind of like calved off of that, or what illuminated parts that weren't inspiration. So I felt fear or whatever. In this case, I was feeling gratitude and had more of a complete experience of that, and then this doubt, what I would call, what I've come to recognize as self-doubt, kind of became apparent. And I remember I kind of like wanted to stay with the gratitude. I wanted to sort of like stabilize my experience of the gratitude, and then after I'd done that, I could turn towards the doubt. And so I turned towards the feeling of doubt. And I think the therapist kind of like asked me about that, asked me some questions about the doubt. And it became apparent that, this doubt, what it kind of starts, it's kind of like I have a sudden picture in my head of what's his name from the Lord of the Rings, Gollum. But before he was, Gollum, my precious, before he was that sort of like gaunt, stringy, hard, being with his spine sticking out, survival instinct being, he was, who was he? I can't remember his name, but before he was Gollum, he was this kind of mild-mannered fellow. And that's kind of the picture I have. This doubt used to be kind of like this mild-mannered, discerning part. It was a part that I could use when I was a natural part of me that could discern, that could resolve, that could clarify, truth-seeking part that was used to sort of really distill truth, distill what felt right. But it hadn't been honored growing up. I got the sense somewhere along the line, I grew up in a conservative Christian household, and I was, from a young age, was sort of told what who God was and how to be in relationship with God, and when you're out of relationship with God, and some pretty important fundamentals of life that were sort of told to me off the bat. And I'm someone who was going to become this, do like healing work. And so maybe there was parts of me that didn't really sort of like jive with, that would have like wanted to ask more questions, wanted to sort of maybe sort out inconsistencies or incongruencies that I was, encountering in the doctrine that I was that was being drilled into me. But that's really was not an option. In fact, any sort of question asking, any doubting of your elders or the message was met with pretty harsh and quick consequences. I got the picture early on that I was not to sort of like ask questions about these things or doubt these things, doubt what I was being told. And so it got turned against me. I doubted myself, as opposed to sort of like getting to exercise this gift of discerning and really sort of sorting things out. I learned that there's something wrong with that part of myself, and it got turned against me, and I doubted myself. And so, in sort of like seeing all this in this session, there was this grief that came up. I was grieving this part of me, grieving how I had sort of like lost that gift, and there was this gift that was there, and this part of me that was there that I, didn't get to do its thing, didn't get to give its gifts, and I sort of grieved that, and there were some tears, and again, I saw how it got twisted into doubt. This discerning part, resolving, clarifying, seeking truth part that sort of got turned against me and turned into self-doubt. And in that, though, and sort of seeing it and having a more complete experience of it, it was like this doubt had become, I don't know, part of this discerning part. It was like poison in there or something. And I could feel how the poison, the toxin, the toxic part of, it was like, it's like a, maybe like ore getting purified of the impurities in it. You know, like if you have a chunk of gold, usually that ore, it's like, you know, it's got all sorts of other junk in it. It's got iron in it, it's got rocks in it, and it's got dirt in it, and they go through a process of sort of like extracting, purifying the ore, the gold from the rest of the junk. It's kind of like that. It's like this thing that had become this part of me, this important part of me that had kind of gotten tainted or contaminated with doubt. There was this purification process that started to happen. I could see it's like the doubt was getting sort of extracted from this discerning, clarifying, useful part of me. And the doubt was getting extracted out of that part of me. And it was like, sort of like a toxic field, the doubt. It was like a toxic field. It's like dirty waste. And it was like a parasite that had been, you know, infiltrated this part of me, and like a virus or something that had glommed onto that part of me or infiltrated that part of me and sort of corrupted it in a certain way. And that has got extracted and purified. And so that part of me was purified. And then I was left with this doubt. I was left with this sort of icky, toxic field, this parasitic sort of like field. And I don't know what prompted me, but I guess, you know, a lot of New Age work would be like, yeah, let's get rid of that. I think maybe, you know, I might have like sort of checked in with, is this something that we need to sort of like throw away or get rid of? But like all shadow material, the message was no. You know, this too is a part of me, and it has gifts. And so I said, what is your gift? And as soon as I did that, this sort of toxic field, this dirty field sort of flipped over and immediately sort of like opened up into sort of like the void. And what I would call the sort of, I was overcome and kind of sucked into the great mystery. It became like it flipped over and was all of a sudden like a window. And beyond the window was like space, like maybe like stars, and, you know, it's like a portal. And what I experienced upon seeing that was, this is the great mystery. Can you see how it kind of like that follows, or that kind of makes sense? Like on one hand, it's doubt that gets in the way. Its cosmic sort of cosmic counterpart is the great mystery. And I had this sort of like direct experience of the great mystery. Suddenly, sort of like any part of me, that the tender, innocent parts of me that wanted to sort of have control, to kind of keep control, suddenly it was like, you know, a tsunami of uncertainty happened. The great mystery. Also, at the same time, sort of like being held by, it's sort of like, we're gonna wipe your ability to grip around uncertainty. We're gonna just, you know, wipe that out and sort of like hold you at the same time in that, support you at the same time in that. And I wept. Again, there were sort of tears, awe at the great mystery. And I had this sense of it being these are kind of like words, it's like, you were my greatest teacher, you are my greatest teacher, my greatest friend all along. And I had this, you know, it was like weakness, power and infinity disguised as weakness. And I had this sort of like archetypal image of, you know, if you've ever seen, I remember watching Robin Hood when I was a kid, or the Robin Hood cartoon, where Robin Hood was a fox. It was like the Disney cartoons, and Robin Hood was a fox. And I can remember the part of that cartoon where Robin Hood puts on a disguise, like he disguises himself as an old man so that he can sort of, I don't know, I can't remember, like infiltrate or gather information or something, go into a crowd where he wouldn't be recognized as Robin Hood. He was like pretending like he was an old man. Or I haven't read, you know, what is it, the, you know, Merlin and the Sir Galahad, I don't know, the, you know, where the sword in the stone story. Who is that? I can't, in this moment, I can't remember the knight or the person who pulled the sword out of the stone, and the lady of the lake and all that fun stuff. But Merlin, the magician, Merlin, the sorcerer, Merlin, the magician, there's some theme around him sort of dressing up or putting on a costume or a, you know, magic sort of like covering of an old man, even though he was like super powerful, you know, magic sorcerer. Anyway, I had that sort of picture, that sort of feel, like this doubt was this super powerful, super magic thing undercover the whole time, this sort of archetypal, direct experience of this archetypal concept. So that was the session. And yeah, so in other videos I've sort of talked about this knowing that happens beyond thought. Like I can't exactly, if I had to try to tell you, you know, I'm telling you that self-doubt is in disguise, it is the great mystery. Like, you know, that might probably means nothing to you. But I had a direct experience of this. I just knew it to be true. I felt it in my whole body and being to be true, this sort of like knowing beyond thought. I've mentioned that it is possible to have a knowing beyond thought that's sort of connected to this, the bottom part of our neck, it seems, in my experience, which is the source of intuition. It's a source of your soul, kind of what lights you up. Your soul kind of using that to draw you this way or that way. But if we are connected to that and open to that, we have access through that to a part of us, this knowing that transcends thought. You know, a lot of the world is addicted to thinking, to understanding, to figuring things out through knowing through thought, through logic. If this, then this, thinking, in order to sort of like feel like they understand, or, and certainly those are not bad parts of us. Those are good parts of us too. They have their gifts too for making decisions and things like that. And we also have access to this knowing that goes beyond thought. So this is kind of another, what I'm talking about is another example of that. I couldn't expect you to maybe understand what I mean, or understand completely that doubt, the flip side of it, is the great mystery. Something magical and powerful, but I had a direct experience of it. And again, that is to say that, pointing that out, to say that, you know, there's this theme that I talk about in my book, my first book, If It Didn't Hurt, How to Resolve Your Pain and Discover Your Life Purpose, that pain is sort of a portal, or can be a portal to healing. The pain, sort of our pain, the challenge, pain, problem, challenge sort of contains all the information that we need to sort of like move to the next stage of our evolution. And so this is just an example of that, that our shadow parts, the parts of us that we've repressed and pushed away and marginalized and judged, and that, you know, we've made bad our whole lives, if we bring enough awareness, if we get curious enough of them and have a direct, you know, bring enough awareness and attention to them with openness, they are a portal to healing. They contain information that sort of solves, you know, soothes the pain, solves the problem in a way that we could not have ever imagined with our thinking intelligence, that we can't make sense of with our thinking intelligence. It also speaks to a holographic view of things. I've been seeing this for some reason showing up on my YouTube feed. Michael Talbot, he wrote The Holographic Universe, and in that he talks about how, you know, like if you have what's a holographic plate, if you shine a laser on that plate, it creates a hologram that you can see. If you break that plate up and shine a laser on it, does it only show you half of the image? No, it shows you the whole image, albeit with a little less resolution, but it shows you the whole image. If you break that plate again and shine a laser light on it, it shows you the whole image again with less resolution, but it shows you the whole image. And so it's like every part of us has access to, has a template, has access to source. We can access source through any part of us. It's just like, you know, yeah, anyway, they talk about, you know, it being like sort of like right in front of our source, being like right in front of, enlightenment is like right in front of your face, but we don't see it. It's just sort of like, you know, like if you focus your eyes on your hand here, if you focus your eyes on your hand here, or let's say I look out there and then focus my eyes on my hand here and then hold my focus and then look away and try to keep my focus on this area that's close to me. It's kind of like that. It's like we have access to this channel. We just kind of have to make this shift. And then, you know, our pain, our betrayal, our anger, our fear, our source is in all that. Source, if you feel it in your body, you might have fear, let's say. You feel fear in your body. Oh, it's right here. It's in my gut. It's this tight ball in my gut. You notice the boundaries of it, but you notice there are parts of you that are not that fear. There are parts of you that are outside, that are bigger, I should say, than that fear. So the fear is not all of you. It's a part of you that you're identifying with, but you can also identify with this part that's bigger than the fear. And the part that's bigger than the fear, it includes and transcends it. It's like a nesting, you know, like those Russian nested dolls or whatever. Source includes and transcends fear and the parts of you that are afraid and the parts of you that are angry. Source, you know, their source infiltrates. What's the word I'm looking for? Infuse the fear, the anger. They are made up of the material that source is made of. They're not separate from source. They are made up of the material that source is made of. And so source includes and transcends these parts. And so you can shift and sort of like connect to source. And I have a video where I did a meditation showing you how to do that based on Loch Kelly's work, who sort of combined parts work with mindfulness meditation. And he does these glimpses where you do that. You shift from, you know, the consensus reality to the part of you that transcends and includes that. So I think that's everything I want to say about where does self-doubt come from and more. I've said everything I want to say about that and more. But I guess the point of that is that any emotion, any part, you know, with enough awareness reveals its gift, reveals that source counterpart. That's what my book is about. If it didn't hurt, how to resolve your pain and discover your life purpose. Again, you can get a free copy, a PDF copy of that on my website at biosoulintegration.com. And again, share this video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I look forward to helping you express more life in the future through the next video and/or through the work that I do in the office here or online with folks around the world. Okay, have a great day.